Welcome to the Emotional Balance Sheet, the go-to podcast for parents with multiple kids, especially those with twins, triplets, or more, who are navigating the maze of modern family life and personal finance. Whether you're overwhelmed by education or retirement planning, parenting dilemmas, career transitions, or trying to define your purpose and plan, we're here to guide you with empathy, encouragement, and expertise. Hosted by Paul Fenner, founder of Tama Capital, a certified financial planner and parent to 4 kids, including a set of triplets. Our podcast is your ally in the quest for financial peace of mind, proving that money matters, but family comes first. Subscribe now and join our community of empowered parents at tamacapital.com. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon for investment decisions. Clients of Tama may retain positions in the securities discussed in this podcast.
What does comprehensive financial planning even mean? At Tama Capital, it means a family office where lifestyle planning such as retirement, college, portfolio management, and tax prep and planning are all under one umbrella. But it goes beyond numbers. We focus as much on the emotional side of financial planning as we do on the financial side. We get you. We understand your challenges of building a family, business or career, and a healthy life. We are devoted to wealth planning for families like yours because we are you. Learn how our family can help your family by visiting tamacapital.com. Have you ever asked yourself, what is the best credit card for me and my family? I get this question a lot, and it's a topic I've wrestled with myself. Today, we're talking with somebody that can help us navigate the complexity of credit card points and reward systems. Spencer Howard is the founder of Straight to the Points. Spencer has built an entire business around helping individuals and families save money on travel and go to places they would have never dreamed of. Our conversation focuses on how to choose the right card based on individual spending habits and travel needs, and sometimes wants. We cover the importance of having a credit card strategy, the difference between cash back and points, and the significance of paying off credit cards to avoid high interest rates. We also talk about family travel strategies, cost-effective flight options, and the importance of choosing the right card to maximize rewards. Please enjoy my conversation with Spencer Howard. All right, Spencer Howard, welcome to the Emotional Balance Sheet podcast. So we're going to get into your background in a few minutes, but you are the founder of Straight to the Points, and it aligns well to a question that I get all the time by families I work with, which is, what credit card should I be using? And I feel like sometimes lackluster response has been, well, what are you really interested in? Like, are you interested in getting cash back? Do you like to travel, use points? And I know that there's a whole gamification to these credit cards and how to use them and which ones to use. So I think the timing of you being on here, we're recording this in early January, is going to be perfect because I know a lot of the families, at least here in Michigan where I'm based, are going to be flying south here in a couple months when we have our midwinter break. So I'm grateful that you decided to come on and look forward to having this conversation. So again, I think the place to start is how do you advise people to choose a credit card?
Yeah, it seems like a very easy question, doesn't it? It's probably the most common question I get as well. And I think people are expecting the kind of one card is best for everything, and it's more like certain cards are best for this thing and another card is best for this thing. And it's more about kind of aligning that to both your travel needs and wants and where you spend your money, honestly. If you buy a lot of groceries, there's cards that earn 3-4 points per dollar on groceries instead of just kind of a standard 1 point per dollar. If you spend a lot at gas stations, similarly, there's cards that earn 3 points. If you spend a lot on travel, there's cards that earn, 3, 4, 5 points. So it's just a matter of lining up where your spend is to the credit card. I know that's not the simple answer that everybody wants, but that's really the starting point for it.
You make a great point there. And one of the notes that I wrote down is, can you or should you have a credit card strategy? And I think that what you're pointing to is, yeah, you probably do, because if you really want to maximize some of these things that align to your lifestyle, then it's not as simple as just having one card. And I think the complexity that people struggle with that is like, okay, well, when should I be using this card? Especially when you're dealing with families or couples like I am. It's like, I tell a household, like, have at least one card that you both jointly use and use for like household expenses, and then maybe have another one or two that you have in your own name that you're using for whatever else there is. And again, I know that, with all these different types of credit card or sponsors, it just gets to be overwhelming. Sure. So how do you cut through the overwhelming?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, well, first, just like setting your expectations. Like, this is a learning process, regardless of whether or not you're just like a casual user of points or somebody who makes it their like number one hobby. Give yourself some patience. It's just a process of like learning a little bit, building on that. And it's kind of a choose your own adventure game. You can decide how deep into it you want to go. I'm crazy. I'm way too deep into it. That's why I'm here talking about it. But I think regardless of whether you're a single person or you have 8 kids, I've worked with people from across the spectrum. The biggest thing is starting out with like just understanding what your spend habits are. And then from there, deciding how into it you want to get. So I would say there's kind of a keep it simple strategy that like 1 to 3 cards, you maximize your bonus categories and you never think about credit cards again. Very common. In my world, the kind of, I call it a hub and supplement model, is where you get like maybe 4 cards and then you supplement with a new card for a sign up bonus every so often. That's kind of a popular approach. And then there's the absolutely crazy like maximalist approach where it's like you get a sign up bonus, then you get a new card, you get a sign up bonus, you get a new card, you get a sign up, just repeat ad nauseum. It's the most effort, but it's also how you earn the most points. So again, it's just how into this you want to be. I find most people are in the first 2 categories because that's just,
I would agree.
It's less effort. But again, I know families who do all the approaches. So it just depends on how interested you are in this and just understanding what expectations you can have based on how many points you're going to earn.
So let's go with the first route. Let's take a family that wants to spend somewhat minimal effort on this. They don't want to create an Excel sheet and figuring out, okay, we got to do this month and this that month. Because I've tried that, for a time or two myself, and I'm like, what the heck am I doing this for?
Yeah, there are apps to track that now.
Am I really
to that point?
Yeah, am I really getting that much value out of this given the time I'm spending? And like with a lot of the families I work with at my financial planning firm Tama, like we try to keep things simple. That whole,
it's like 80-20 rule.
yeah, exactly. So I think if I were to dive a little bit more, go another layer below this, if you're keeping it simple and you have, say, 3 or 4 cards per family, let's start with the question of cash back versus points.
Yeah.
Where do we go from there?
If you don't care about travel that much and maybe you just occasionally, take a road trip or something, just get cash back, keep your life easy. Like you can get a 2% cash back card. It should always be 2%. And you don't have to think about which card to use when. You don't have to think about points and how to redeem them. Just get a 2% cash back card, move on with your life. There are other things for you to do. That's just, I don't think it's worth getting into the kind of the points game unless you actually want to travel. For those who do, I think...
Full disclosure, I fall into that bucket until more recently in these last few years where my wife, Teresa, has wanted us to travel more. And that's where I feel like I'm missing out. So like...
Yeah, sure.
Selfishly, I'm having this conversation with you because I want to know. But I know there's a lot of other people out there that want to know too.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think if you are going to travel, I think... at base level, everyone should have a card that earns 2 points per dollar on everything. The Capital One Venture or Capital One Venture X, basically one without like lounge benefits, one with lounge benefits if you're at the airport. Those cards earn 2x on just all your day-to-day spend. So you're never earning just 1 point per dollar. I think that's a really good foundation. Even if that's the only card you got, you're always earning a little bit more. And to get you to a trip faster. After that, I think that's where you decide, like, okay, if I'm spending a lot of money on groceries, the Amex Gold Card earns 4x on groceries up to $25,000 a year. So depending on what you're spending at grocery stores, that could be a huge multiplier for you. Similarly, there's like the City Premier earns 3x on gas and groceries. So if you're a gas station grocery person, then like that's an easy card to just get 3x on everything. So it's really a foundation of 2 points per dollar. You should never earn less than that. And then you figure out where you're spending besides that and try to level up, 1 or 2 points more per dollar. And I do get that when you say like 1 or 2 more points, like that's not that much. But when you add it up over, the course of a year, it really does kind of show the benefit.
So one of the things that I'm a big fan of, if I can get the right families to do this, is to use a credit card for all their spending, whether they're in points or cash. But as long as obviously they're paying it off at the end of every month, that's the real key to make this work. Because if not, you could do all this work and then blow it all because you're paying 20% interest rate.
Your points will never be worth more than the interest. I think sometimes people who are unfamiliar with this kind of points game, they meet me and they're like, oh my God, you have 25 credit cards. What's wrong with your credit score? And I'm like, no, my credit score is like 825. I always pay my cards on time. And that's, it's kind of like the number one rule in points is like, you always pay on time. And sometimes friends are like, you're a little aggressive about that. Like, you're going to like turn some people off. I'm like, good. Like, please know that this is an extra in life. Get solid on all the financial stuff before, like, this is fun hobby stuff. This is not a must to keep going in life. Yeah.
So when I hear the word points, sometimes I'm not sure how to equate that, because I think some people think points in miles, like you're flying out an airline, but that's not necessarily the case, right?
Points, miles, whatever. Some airlines use the term points. Some airlines use the term miles. Some airlines have a branded term that doesn't use either of them. And then hotels use the word points generally. So they're kind of interchangeable for our purposes. Don't worry about which one it is. Only thing I will say is there are credit cards that earn like bank-owned points that are transferable to different airlines. And I mentioned like the Capital One Venture and Venture X cards, the Amex Gold, the City Premier. Each of those cards earns a point within the bank's program that can then be transferred to different travel brands, airlines, and hotels. And that's where I generally tell people to focus, because you are not locked into one airline or one hotel. Kind of keeps your options open, just depending on what's available the days you want to travel.
Yeah, that's interesting, because I've never really gotten into points per se, because I currently live in Metro Detroit, so we're a Delta hub here. So full disclosure, I use Amex Delta card for some things.
Their marketing is strong.
What's that?
Their marketing is strong.
It is. It's very good.
My dad flew 2.8 million miles with Delta and had a Delta Amex. Like, I'm very familiar with that universe.
So, but to your point, like every airline pretty much has their own branded card that generates points or miles for that specific brand.
Yeah. And the reason I say you can get locked in that way is like, if you have Delta Sky Miles and let's just say you want to go to London. It's a big trip. It's exciting, whatever. But there's no award space that you can use your Sky Miles on for a flight to London. But there is some space on, say, British Airways, or maybe what's another one, like, I don't know, Lufthansa through Germany. You can't book those with Sky Miles, but if you had points that could transfer to one of those partners, like, you could book them. So the idea is like, you're never going to know which airline's going to have award space the day you want to book with points. You may as well give yourself as many options as possible. And when you have transferable points, you can leverage a ton of different partnerships. Beyond just kind of like thinking about using Sky Miles to book Delta flights, you can use Sky Miles to book Air France, KLM, ITA out of Italy, like all these different partnerships. So they're in the Sky Team Alliance. You also have, Americans in One World, United's in Star Alliance. As long as you're booking something within the alliance, you can use your miles from one airline to book another airline. So I realize that's like a bit complicated, probably step 2. But the idea is like, you're trying to give yourself as many options as possible, because airlines aren't going to release award space whenever you want it. It's more of a game. So
right. So going back to the whole to just focus on this points thing for a minute, is that something you recommend? Is rather than going with a branded mile card like the Delta Amex card, you would prefer something like you mentioned the venture capital card,
One
or
Venture,
I know there's Chase Sapphire is
Yep,
really big because
popular.
they advertise that all over as well.
Yep.
So is that one way that you kind of guide people to, is using one of those points ones over a dedicated airline branded card?
We call it transferable points because that's literally what you do. You just go in and transfer the points. So as an example with Delta, even if you're going to fly Delta and maybe you do want to use Sky Miles for something, if you have a card like the Amex Gold, not the Delta Gold, but the Amex Gold, their own branded card, you earn membership rewards points. Those points can be transferred to Delta, but they can also be transferred to like Air Canada, British Airways, Air France, KLM's Flying Blue program. You have a ton of different options. So now you're not stuck with Delta, but you can still access Delta miles. So it allows you to kind of open up your options, but also opens up arbitrage opportunities, which is kind of my favorite part. So just taking, again, we're going to stick with Delta since you're in Detroit. If you want to fly to, let's say, Paris, and there's an Air France flight with business class availability, I'm aspirational here. A one-way ticket using Delta miles could cost 150 to 200,000 miles for a one-way ticket for one person. If you used Air France's own program, Flying Blue, it would cost 50,000 miles. So
that's a huge difference.
So if you're transferring Amex points to book that flight, just transfer the one that requires fewer points and don't pay, 3-4 times the cost. Now, that's an extreme example because Delta has notoriously bad award rates on premium cabin tickets. But it just gives you the idea that like not all programs are the same. And so being able to take advantage of the arbitrage opportunities is where you can find a ton of value.
So one of my questions is that, like, if you go with a card that's points based, like you're saying, do you get when you go to like book airfare, for example, do you get this? Does your point go as far as as my Delta mile goes, or do I lose some of that?
You have to clarify that for me. Sorry.
I'm when I was asking a question, I'm like, I know this is going to come out wrong. So like if I'm earning, let's just say with the venture capital card, like I'm earning 2 points for every dollar I spend.
Yep.
And on my Delta Amex, I'm earning 2 miles for every dollar I spend. Is that 2 points that I'm earning with the venture capital one card? When I go to transfer that or convert that into miles, with Delta, am I getting the same amount of miles that I would if I was just using my Amex Delta card? Does that help?
Yeah, I gotcha. I think that's a good question. So generally speaking, transfers are a 1-to-1 ratio. So if you earn 2 Capital One Venture miles, you can transfer to one of their airline partners at a 1-to-1 ratio. So 1 mile or 1-to-1. So there's occasional exceptions. They're rare, but it also displays that before you even transfer the points. So you're not surprised by it. So to me, it just always makes sense to use a card that earns those transferable points. Again, it's all about opening up more opportunities for you and making it easier for you to book the flights you want.
Yeah, so that goes back to your previous point, because that's what I always was curious about because I know that Delta is notorious, as you put it, for not having the best award system, and so that's why I've always wondered is like, okay, if I use something else, am I going to get the same bang for the buck, if you will, if I was just using my Amex Delta?
I would suggest you get a lot more bang for your buck. Delta they have set up their award program in which, one, they don't publish what we call saver level award rates, the lowest number of points you can use. They say it's dynamic and it varies based on price. I haven't noticed a real correlation to cash prices, especially on international tickets. Sometimes they'll charge 400,000 points for a one-way ticket to Europe, while other programs are requiring somewhere between 35 and 70,000 points for a one-way. So speaking to business class, just because that's what I like to focus on.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's just something to be aware of. Not all programs are going to be good. Not all of them are going to, and then some will be great for whatever trip you're taking this time and will be terrible for the next trip. It just depends where you're going.
Okay. In the probably last question on this before we move on to the next topic is there any consideration, to stay on this Delta thing, is because if I'm using my Delta Amex card, that gets me my miles that goes towards my status at Delta. Sure. Versus if I'm just using points, then that's not going to build my status, right?
Sure. Yeah, I think if you're a work traveler, go for it. If you're on the road constantly and it's going to be the thing that pushes you over the hump to get to the next level of status, by all means. I think that doesn't apply to most people. Most people are not on the road 50% of their life or more. I know some are, and like that's a whole different ballgame. But for those who,
yes, it is
most normal kind of jobs, like maybe you travel a few times a year, if that. Otherwise, like you're at home. And so I don't think it makes a ton of sense to chase status. I think it's better if it's just kind of happens naturally because you're traveling a lot for work and somebody else is footing the bill, ideally. I know some small business owners have to do it themselves, but, work that into your contracts. So, yeah, I think the status game, I mean, it's lucrative for the airlines. Just make sure you actually need it and are going to benefit from it, because just having the Delta credit card gets you a free check bag. Like, you don't need to earn the status to get there. You could just have the credit card. Now you have access to a free check bag. So it's that kind of thing where you have to think about what you're really going to need from status and how much you're going to spend extra to get there versus what you could just be getting with natural spend that you're doing anyway.
Yeah, this is a debate that my wife Teresa and I have all the time, because we are before I started my firm, back when I was in my corporate career, I had jobs where I was in a plane 3-4 times a month. So status to me was really important then, because I was, it just was. There are perks for people that are in an airport, on a plane, week in and week out. Yep. And so since then, I don't travel. I may travel 3 or 4 times a year, a couple family trips, maybe a couple business trips, and that's it. And Teresa, with the employer that she works for, there's years where they let her travel quite a bit, and then there's years where they're cutting back. Yeah. So it's always this, well, what are you really getting out of the status, and how much are we trying to spend to get there?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think a lot of times, if you aren't just traveling a ton for work, you start to find yourself going out of your way to get it. And I think especially if you have kids, you're in Detroit and you want to fly. I mean, let's just say you're flying somewhere that Delta doesn't operate a nonstop flight for, and all of a sudden you're going to be connecting just because, rather than just booking the nonstop flight, and you're going to bring 4 kids with you and be like, come on kids, let's run through the airport. It'll be so much fun. I don't think anybody's enjoying that. So that's where I start to be just take the flight that works for you. Even if you're paying cash, and sometimes it's cheaper. Don't spend more just to run yourself around the country trying to fly the same airline.
We actually ran into this, Spencer, just a few weeks ago when we were trying to book our midwinter break trip that's coming up in February. And we really wanted to fly Delta, but for the 6 of us, it was literally $4,800. And then we booked the same thing on Spirit, and it's $2,500. And I've never flown Spirit, so I don't know how this is going to go.
Come back to me. Let me know.
What's that?
Come back to me and let me know.
we will. I'm sure this is not going to be our last conversation. But they only had these seats that are kind of I think the equivalent of Comfort Plus and Delta. So it may not be that bad. We'll see how it goes. Shout out to Andrew Poxa, my next door neighbor, who actually is a pilot for Spirit.
Hey,
so
nice.
Yeah. So there's 10 or 12 of us that are all going to be on this plane together. So, but that was one thing we ran into. It's well, Teresa didn't have she was just missing the status to get to the next level, basically silver. I'm well, what are we getting out of that? Number one. And number two is with that differential in cost, I'm maybe I should have had another card where I was getting points that I could have used those points for Spirit. But since I have all my miles tied up in Delta, I was basically locked in.
Yeah. Spirit's a tough one with points, but they often have better cash tickets. You'll see similar stuff with Frontier
The lower cost ones.
Yeah, and they can be really useful. I think I know sometimes people brush off some airlines, but I think there's a place for it all. And I like seeing
you're
the different
traveling
price
with
points
6 kids like I am, Spencer. There's definitely a place.
Exactly. So it's
I should say 6 of us, 4 kids.
Okay. 4 kids. Yeah. I have 1 and that's enough. So it's I think there's definitely a place for that. I think there's also, you mentioned the Chase Sapphire Preferred. There's another version of it called the Chase Sapphire Reserve, which is kind of the souped up, more expensive version that has lounge access and other perks. But like the Sapphire Reserve both of them have access to the Ultimate Rewards travel portal where you can use your points for a cash ticket. Sometimes it's a better deal than transferring the points. But what's really nice about the Sapphire Reserve is each point in their bank portal is 1.5 cents per point. So when you redeem points against a cash ticket, you can pretty quickly wipe out the cost of it. And that can be hugely beneficial for these cash tickets that you're booking, especially when no matter what you do with a family of 6, you're going to be spending a lot to go anywhere.
Right.
It doesn't matter if you've got this great deal that's only $200, it's still $1,200.
That's right. So it adds up fast.
And I know some people would just flick that money over like it's nothing, but that's not everybody. So we need to be aware of that. So I think that's just another kind of, again, it's another play depending on if you're doing a lot of domestic travel, that kind of redemption can be a really good use of your points versus when you're traveling internationally, often transferring is better. Again, it just depends on the situation, but I think it's good for people to kind of be aware of what's out there.
So if you were sitting down with one of the families that I work with and they're asking you what credit card should I be using, and I'll give you a mirror of Teresa and I, because that's I primarily work with families. And so we travel domestically maybe once or twice, probably twice a year, with our family. We may travel a couple times for business. But then outside of that, our normal everyday life, we shop at Costco a lot because we're a big family. Locally, because we're based here in Metro Detroit, Kroger is big. But then other than that, there's nothing else that's special about us from a spending standpoint other than we spend a lot because we're a big family.
Yeah. It's amazing how that happens, right?
Right, exactly. So in a situation like that, what would be your credit card strategy for a family like I just described?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, just kind of what I just told you. Oh, actually, let me back up. Do you travel internationally for fun? Do you take trips over to Europe or anything?
But I'm still waiting for Teresa to take me on my 10-year and 15-year wedding anniversary. So
all right,
next year will be 20. So hopefully she'll pull through and deliver.
You got something. 3 trips coming up.
That's right.
See ya, kids. So honestly, kind of what I was talking about earlier, I think the Venture or Venture X card, that just to earn 2x on everything, it's also a Visa card. You have to use a Visa at Costco. That's right. I also shop at Costco quite a bit, so I'm used to that. And so again, that's just a 2x earning on all your Costco spend. And then the Amex Gold, I think either the Amex Gold or the City Premier, probably the Amex Gold, because you can earn 4x on groceries. So when you're going to Kroger, buying food for a family of 6, that's
it's crazy.
That's insane. And also, if you go out to eat ever, it's a 4x on dining purchases as well. So I think those 2 cards, just as a start, already jumps you from earning 1x to 2 and 4x, depending on which purchase you're making at the time. So I think that's just an easy one. And I'm all about easy wins. So I think there's any number of things you could do to build beyond that. But that, based on just where your spend is going, is just a great foundation. And like I said, everything is a step-by-step process. You have to build that kind of the foundational pieces before you move to anything more advanced. I think getting that stuff kind of in your head first lets you decide if you want to take it a step further or if you just want to say, I'm good here. And
baby
to
steps.
To me, the best part is there's no wrong answer. It's just what you decide to do. And I always give the example of friends of mine who play golf. I'm not a golfer myself, but I have friends who will go to the driving range every week and they will go to the putting green and practice, and then they'll play on the weekends and they're trying to beat their best score from last time. And then another friend will show up having played maybe 3 months ago with them, drink beer, does not care how well he does, and they all have a great time. But the person who just randomly shows up, has a beer and goes out for a round, like, he doesn't expect to be on their level and to be like getting as much out of it as they are. Like, he's just there for a good time. He takes what he can get. And I think it's similar with points. Like, you can be very casual, you use it where it makes sense. And then you can be somebody who gets a little more into it and like tries to figure out the arbitrage opportunities and like you squeeze out a little more. And like, yeah, that person's going to get more out of this points kind of game than others, but it doesn't mean that others can't play it too.
So one of the questions with any of the cards, how does like the annual fee cost of some of these cards factor into your decision making process?
I'm a big like cost benefit analysis person.
I assumed you were, so I'm like, this is gonna be a great question for you.
Yeah, I think sometimes people think we're just like reckless and not paying attention. I'm like, no, we like spreadsheets and numbers, and like every credit card has to prove its worth to stay in my wallet every year. To me, it's are the benefits of the card. So like, let's take the Venture X for example. It provides some lounge access at airports. Am I using that lounge access? How often am I using that? Because the Venture X costs $395 a year. That's a hefty annual fee. It comes with a $300 travel credit. I know I travel a lot. So that to me is like easy. It's going to get used anyway. That's just kind of a wash. Now,
what can you use that travel credit for?
So I mentioned that Chase has their bank portal where you can book travel through them. Same concept. Capital One's travel credit you have to use through their travel portal. I usually just book a flight. I know people don't always like booking with third parties for flights. I haven't had any issues. You could also book a hotel, but it's just $300 towards, if you're going to travel anyway and you're going to have to spend it on travel, like I'll just take the opportunity to use it there. So for me, I'm trying to make up that $95 difference. And
so net your $95 is the cost of it.
And I wouldn't say that it's worth the full 300 because I'm locked into like their portal, but that's a bit nitpicky. So to me, I'm making up 95 on like, am I using lounges regularly because of this card? Am I earning enough points at 2x per dollar that it's making this card worth it? And also you get $10,000 points on your account anniversary every year. So it's that right there to me is worth $100 of travel at minimum. So to me, it's a no-brainer again, but I travel a lot. So that's where I'm kind of running the numbers on that card. There's plenty of other cards that I have where I would say I don't use them for my day-to-day spend, but they come with specific benefits that I like. That's where you have to kind of really do the math. An example of that is like some hotel branded credit cards come with free night certificates.
Yes.
And that's great in theory. Then you try to use them and you like realize that the annual fee is costing you as much or more than the free night you would have just paid cash for. Then it makes no sense. That's where like you really have to be thoughtful about it. And yeah, so once it comes time for the annual fee to be due, that's where you make that decision. But it's every card is different. That decision is going to be different for every person based on their travel and spend habits. I think, again, I'm always going back to this. There's no one size fits all solution. And that's good. That allows you to kind of customize things, but it does take, an additional 30 minutes of your life.
So one question I want to come back to, because I don't think I've asked this, at least I don't recall that I've asked it in this way, is with a card that's giving you 2% cash back, how does that compare to like the Venture X that's giving you 2 points for every dollar you spend? Is there any difference there other than you're going to get the cash back versus using those points for potential travel or something else?
So the idea is that with points, you can generally get outsized value from the points. And that's where the benefit is. And if you want to get like into the nitty gritty, like there are those of us who will calculate our like cents per point on like, hey, this is like the flight cost and I use points, and based on that, I'm getting 5 cents per point. It's more complex than that if you want to get like a real cost analysis. Because like if I've booked a flight that a round trip ticket to Japan in first class that would have been $21,000, and I use like 87,000 points. But am I really getting 14 cents per whatever it is per point? No, because I was never going to pay $21,000 for a flight. So,
Right.
but you can but I think it helps kind of give you a sense of like what you kind of can, I don't know, that's down the rabbit hole, but it gives you a sense of like how much your points can be worth. You can get some of these aspirational experiences. Yeah. And even if it's not for the full family trip, maybe it is an anniversary trip, just you and your wife, you go somewhere and like you fly business class to Europe.
Teresa, I hope you're listening to this.
Yeah. Paul would like you to book him a business class ticket to Europe. So when you use the points for that, those like, that is, you're never going to get there with 2% cash back unless you just have an absurd amount of spend. That's where I think the points can really shine.
Okay.
Nothing wrong with cash back though.
we have dived into the great depths of this points, cash, everything. So my question for you next, Spencer, is how in the world did you become an expert at this? How did you get into this world of points, ROI analysis? How did that happen?
I mean, it's going to sound funny, but I worked in politics for a long time before I got into this, everybody's favorite profession. People now ask me more about what I do than then. But I was working at the U.S. Travel Association in a political role. And I guess we got press clips every day. And they sent something from a blogger. And I was like, why am I reading what some blogger thinks about this public policy issue? Like, it was so dismissive on my part. And then I started poking around his website and I was like, oh, points, business class, huh? Use points to fly business class to Europe. Well, I'm 6'3". I would like that space. So I think truly from that moment on, I think I spent like 4 hours a night for like 6 months reading credit card terms and conditions, airline program, like rules, like routing rules, trying to figure out how I could get the most out of, any booking that I did. And within like 9 months, I started writing about it part-time. And then another 6 months, I was full-time writing about points. So it's, I like to, I know that people talk about the creator economy now. I say I'm more of like an educator. I'm not really funny. I don't have, great videos, but I'm good at teaching people how to do the stuff.
So we'll put a link in the show notes to your website, which is straight to the points. But talk to us about like, if I don't want to do this on my own, do you offer something like a consultation or a program to either for people that maybe are a little bit more DIY versus somebody that wants to just say, hey, you give me a recommendation, Spencer, like how does that work?
Yeah. So a couple things. I do one-on-one coaching calls, mostly built around credit card strategy. Some people come back later and want to do kind of a deeper dive into using points, but a lot of it's building a card strategy to maximize earning. And then I also have a newsletter for those who like booking business class flights on international routes, where I send out dates that can be booked. And then I break down like how you would book them with which points and why you would choose one points program versus another. That's the arbitrage stuff that I really like. So that's the main thrust of my business is the newsletter, but I do a lot of coaching calls as well.
Interesting. So is it the best place to find you is straighttothepoints.com, correct?
Straighttothepoints.co.
.co.
It's very clever. And I'm on Instagram at Straight to the Points. I'm really active on Instagram.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll make sure that we put a link to the notes. But usually a closing question that I have for all of my guests, and I know you just mentioned that you have a child, is, well, do you have a boy or a girl?
I have a daughter. Yeah.
Your daughter. And how old's your daughter?
14 months.
14 months. So you're pretty new to this game. So my closing question is, what is the best thing about being a parent?
It always feels selfish, honestly, because it's not about me. But for me, selfishly, it's just fun watching her do new things. I don't know. It's just, she seems happy about doing new things. So it's fun to watch her kind of light up when she just started walking around recently. And I feel like it was the span of a week where she went taking 3 steps between things to just like, I'm going to sprint across the room. So I'm like, oh, we're there now. Let's make sure the gate's closed to the stairs before. So yeah, it's just fun to watch her light up when she's doing things.
Well, those are really good years. And when I found out I was having triplets, I remember somebody telling me very early on to be be careful. It was a warning. He said, be careful because the days will be long, but the years will be short.
Yeah.
And it's the truest truism of parenting I've ever heard. And now in the 14 years and 1 month I've been a parent now. So
yeah, I think I already feel that. My wife and I was like, didn't she just get here? Oh, it's great. That's great. It's great advice for parents though.
Well, Spencer, I can't thank you enough for being on the Emotional Balance Sheet podcast. And I'm sure this is, we'll have many more conversations from here, but thank you for enlightening us on how we can put together a credit card strategy and using these points.
Yeah. Thanks so much for having me, Paul. I appreciate it.
I think Spencer is someone that we're going to have on again here sometime soon. There are a couple of key takeaways for me regarding our conversation around these credit card points and reward systems. And I think first and foremost is starting with defining like what your credit card strategy should be. That may sound kind of odd, like, well, why do I need a credit card strategy? Well, as Spencer points out, these things can get really complicated. And you kind of want to take the complication or the overwhelmingness out of it. And as Spencer mentioned probably multiple times, just start with the basics. And starting with the basics means understanding your spending habits and your travel wants, or if you're not a traveler, cash back options. It's finding what it is that you're looking to help achieve, whether it's to save money on travel, save money for another purpose, whether it's a vacation, kids 529, savings account, you name it. Like, you can do anything with this money. It's the matter of defining or deciding how best you want to utilize it. So there's a direct correlation or tie-in to the financial planning aspect of what I do at TAMA and what we talked about on the show over the years. The other point that I think is worth heeding is Spencer talks about start simple. Start with a credit card or two, and then get a feel for, am I using this in the right way? For example, like I have a Citibank Costco card because as a family of 6, we shop there often, and that's typically the best card to use there. But then if you shop somewhere else, you know, that a different card may be better. And then you have these generic cards that he referenced a few of those that just give back like 2x the points or 2% cash back. So start small, kind of have start building a deliberate strategy, if you will, and then you can build off of it. And the last thing I want to emphasize is that it will do you no good building up this credit card strategy or points or cash back if you're not paying off your credit card every month. Credit card rates can go from anywhere from 18 to 27%. And so it doesn't matter how much you're saving or collecting in points or cash back, it will all get eaten up in interest cost if you're not paying off your credit card each month. Now that you've made it to the end of another great conversation, are you looking for more? If so, head over to tamacapital.com, where you will find all of our conversations. Use the search feature to find the topic or guest you would love to learn more about. Also, don't forget to make someone else's day by sharing our show. That's all for this week. We'll see you next time.